Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the Gnarly Gnome. This is Cincy Brewcast. It's the voice of Cincy Craft. This is Cincinnati's longest-running craft beer podcast. 9 years in running, we venture around the city to all of the breweries, sometimes the bars, sometimes bottle shops. Sometimes we just hang out in people's backyards and drink beer while it's raining on us. We do whatever we need to do to talk about Cincinnati's craft beer community. And we talk to the owners, the brewers, the drinkers of Cincinnati's craft beer to illustrate this thing for you and to get you kind of behind the scenes into what is going on in this city, because Cincinnati's freaking awesome. And sometimes I force myself to take trips out of the city to go to other beer cities just to get a better perspective on how great we actually do have it here in Cincinnati. Today's guest, no stranger to this show. If you guys are longtime listeners to this show, or even fairly recent listeners to this show, you know him, Andy Reynolds from Alexandria Brewing Company, still the reigning champ of podcast appearances.
Really?
I think so.
Huh.
I don't have an easy way to check that anymore. My notes are just a complete mess right now.
I would have thought Evan probably would have overtaken me, but
he hasn't been on in a while though.
Really?
He's much more sparse now. He's got lots of
responsibilities,
lots of moving pieces going on over there at the at Braxton and all of the stuff that they've got going on. That's a machine at this point over there. It's a big thing going on.
I don't know. They're doing okay.
How are you, man? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, of course. It's always a pleasure to have you. Always a pleasure to give myself an excuse to quote unquote have to come down to Alexandria to drink a few beers. My wife this morning, as we were parting ways, as we were rushing past each other trying to fight for the coffee maker and all of that stuff, she said, "Are you home late tonight?" And I said, "I'm like, I don't know, like not that. It's not late right now." I'm like, "But I have like an afternoon episode." She's like, "Oh, where's it at?" And I said, "It's Alexandria." She's like, "Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm taking her out to dinner tomorrow." All right, I need to drink a beer because, and I'm going to do this completely ass backwards right now.
Okay.
You very graciously put together this nice flight for me of some things we wanted to talk about, and I'm assuming you put them in order that you think I should drink them, and I'm going to start at the end.
Yeah, you do you, Bill.
You guys did a thing down here that is not what you're supposed to do. So you guys, well, just to go back a little bit, you put on a slow pour handle.
Yeah.
Which, but let's while I get into this for a second, explain to people what a slow pour handle is.
It's the traditional way to pour beer over in Europe, specifically Czech region and Germany. But you pour it, and as you open it up slowly, you foam a lot, right? So the traditional way to pour a Pilsner was let it fill with foam, let it settle down, let it fill with foam, let it settle down, and keep doing that. And what you wind up with is like a big, I think it really brings out the hops more than anything else. I mean, but it brings out like the floralness of beer.
I think it brings out everything in the beer better. Like it tames down the carbonation a lot. And
you're exhausting all the carbonation is what you're doing. You're letting it slowly die out, then you're putting it back in and letting it slowly die out. And that's forcing all the aroma up into that foam instead of,
right?
Instead of just in the
being
beer.
Trapped inside the beer.
Yeah,
I think that's something that people don't realize when they're drinking craft beer. It's one of the biggest reasons that we always tell people to put your beer in a glass, especially when you're drinking out of a can or a bottle. Pour it into a glass because you've got to get all that stuff out of the beer.
Right.
Anybody that has ever had one of those bad nights at a bar and you get home and you just feel really bloated and crappy from drinking draft beer all night. So many people, draft beer makes me feel. It's because they're like really, being very careful to pour this beer and not get any head on the beer, and all that stuff is still trapped inside there, and it kind of it's not always fun.
No,
it's supposed to come out.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, we're kind of in an area where people expect us to not put much head on the beer at all, and we're trying to open that idea up, and that's kind of where the slow pour idea helps out with, at least around here it does.
So the last time I was down here, you had your Pilsner on tap on your slow pour handle.
I don't think
awesome.
We had it on. I don't think we had the slow pour Pilsner. I think you were here the first time we put that on. That was the second round.
Okay, well, the last time that I was here.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a Pilsner, which is almost always what I see people put on their slow pour handle, because that was where it came from traditionally. I have seen 50 West play around with other lagers, and but it's always a lager. This is the first time that I've seen somebody do things a little different, and you put a New England IPA on your slow pour handle.
Why not?
I think it's cool. I took a couple drinks of this one. I need to get into. I have both the slow pour version and the regular version, and okay, this is called
Eternal Fury, the Wrath Within, Scorch. Oh, you go ahead.
I got my notes here. Look, this is Eternal Fury, the Wrath Within, scorched by the fire that sent me.
Yes.
What in the world is? I'm assuming this is some kind of heavy metal reference.
It is. It's After the Burial is the name of the band. Behold the Flame, or Behold the Crown. That's the name of the song. But I love Burial Brewing. Like,
sure.
They've become a favorite of mine, and Three Floyds is always like my outside of here, I should say, is always my go-to, and right. I was kind of excited first time I had Burial, just how cool their names are, how metal their branding is, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, let's kind of pay tribute to them and also pay tribute to this band I've been listening to a lot. So there we go.
So this is going down a different little rabbit hole here at the beginning, but like it's one thing to try to win people over and explain to them the idea of ordering a slow pour Pilsner or even a New England IPA down here in Alexandria. When you have a beer that's called Eternal Fury, the Wrath Within, scorched by the fire that sent me, when people look up there, do you think there's people that are like, I'm not ordering that's I don't know how to order that. I don't know what that is. I got to move on to something else. I'll take regular domestic beer, please.
Most of the time they just say, can I have the Fury, or can I have the Eternal Fury, or whatever. They really shorten it. But once they see it's a New England, so we were kind of talking about this before you even started, but down here, when we first started, nobody drank IPAs. Right. And now I've had a couple people tell me that they credit the fact that like IPAs are selling to us. A couple liquor store owners, and then also a couple customers have told me that. And I guess that's good. I don't know. To me, it's, I know when we first opened, it was the face people would make was, that cringy, like, right, bitter beer face, and now it's like a regular thing where people are ordering them a lot more frequently. I mean, it's our second best-selling beer is Till the Battle's Won, which is like our standard. I call it a Midwest IPA because it's got the juicier hops in it, but it's really
still
a West Coast
it's still hoppy, and it still has some bitterness too.
Yeah.
I think that plays into a lot of why New England IPAs kind of took off the way they did, because it was kind of, for a lot of people, an easier road into IPA. They liked hops. They like hoppiness. But they like a certain type of hoppiness.
Yeah.
They don't like the bitterness that hops bring. Which this beer is a really, really, really crazy kind of example of how that slow pour does change a lot about the beer.
Change it. I think it makes it 50 times more bitter.
It makes it's crazy.
Because that beer is not bitter at all until you have it in that slow pour way, and then it smells like fresh hops.
Yeah.
I mean, it smells like you just opened a bag of hops.
Yeah, it smells completely different.
Yeah.
I'm sniffing for the people that aren't watching on YouTube. If you don't know that already, this show is always on YouTube now also. And I encourage everybody to go subscribe over on YouTube and watch it there after you listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. Listen to both. It's fine. There's nothing different, but it's...
You can see our faces.
Which isn't always fun for everybody, but...
It's not for me.
Yeah, that's a really fun experiment to do that.
So they're on the exact same... I mean, we pour the regular pour out of that slow pour tap. We just open it all the way.
Right.
So it's both... It's the same keg. There's nothing different other than the way that we poured it.
Let's see, and I think... And somebody can correct me, or you can correct me if you know a little bit more about the history of this. I don't think when originally, I don't think slow pours were being poured very slow.
I think you're right. I think it was probably something that they realized that, hey, this is a better way to do it.
The idea of a slow pour Pilsner started in the United States. Like the idea of marketing that way.
To market it for sure.
Beer stat.
For sure.
They're like, you know what? Hey, this is a cool thing. and you're gonna have to wait for this beer.
Yeah.
I don't think it was thought about that way before we started messing around with stuff.
No, I've never been to like Pilsner Urquell or anything like that, but I've heard that if you go there, that is how they do it for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
But again, I've never been there. I've only been to Germany, and when I was there, nothing. I drank a lot of Dunkel more than anything else. So, I think I maybe had one Pilsner, but I was not into Pilsner at that point in my life. So,
well, and I think
I was kind of running from it.
It's the idea of doing slow pours is definitely not a German thing at all. It's Czech Republic. It's definitely
well, like the Bavarian region though, they kind of did it there too, is my understanding, because it's southern, right on the border.
Yeah,
but I'm not 100% sure. I just know it is more of a Czech thing than it is absolutely a German thing than it is a German thing. I mean, I just heard that they're doing it in some region of Bavaria.
Would love to go to Pilsner Urquell and drink there, but from my understanding, the only proper way to do it is find one of the times where you can take a tour of the cellars where they still have just a little bit of beer that they age down there and serve out of the tanks down there in the cellars. I think that's the only way to do it. Everything else they're doing with Pilsner Urquell is an abomination of everything that is Pilsner Urquell.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listen to the Weekly Pint that often, but
I try to.
The other couple weeks ago, after Asahi made their Octopi purchase, started this thought in my head of, oh my god, like if they have this idea in their head to bring, their Japanese lager over to the United States and produce it here, what's stopping them from just deciding tomorrow, Pilsner Urquell, everything that we're selling here in the United States should probably be made here in the United States. It makes more sense, because it does.
Yeah, it does.
So I have this fear that one of these classic brands that I still have some kind of soft spot in my heart for will go away.
Well, Octopi for a long time, and they still are mostly a contract brewery.
It's like 50%, I think.
I think it's a little bit higher than that. So I had a friend from when I went to school. I had a friend that wound up there, and he worked there for 2 years, 3 years.
It's not 50%. You're right. 50% of what they're making is beer. 50% is other beverages.
Yeah,
that's what's in my head.
That would make more sense. Yeah, because that's what they were. They built a new production facility a few years ago, and that was just because they had so many contracts. I mean, I know. And I'm not going to get into names here, but I know certain breweries in Cincinnati contract through them because they think it's a more quality product than some of the ones in Cincinnati do. I'm not throwing out names, and I'm not saying one way or the other is right or wrong. But.
I don't know that they currently are still contracting, but Urban Artifact was very open about that on social media of like, hey, we're contracting some of our stuff. We're doing it at Octopi. Here's who we're having making our beer. We went out there. We wanted to make sure, they were very open about why they were going there and how they felt about the brewery as a whole.
Well, they're my understanding, and my buddy Cameron, who's not even in the industry anymore, he was a guy that used to work there, and he told me that they're very religious about matching water profiles the best they can, using same yeast, same ingredients.
Make the beer that you're supposed to make.
Well, I think the biggest problem is that, like, and I've never been quiet about this either. When in KS contract our canning for a while, right? And it's just a water difference was and they have a different brew house. They're direct heat and we're direct fire, and we're indirect heat and steam.
There are limitations on any brew house that you're on,
right?
But when you get to some of the scales of some of these massive places like Octopi or like AB InBev or some of the those large macro breweries here in the country, they have a little bit more wiggle room to make these brew houses that can kind of do whatever you want them to do. And so like when you look at a big place like Octopi, they're way more capable of replicating a beer down to something as minute as water profile or whatever it may be. Well, than a place like Wooden Cask ever could be.
Right, and it's not to say there's anything wrong with what Wooden Cask was doing with our beer, but it was definitely a different flavor than what our beer was.
Right,
and part of that is with Octopi or those bigger guys. It's all the water is going in reverse osmosis, and then they're injecting. Mm-hmm. To get your water profile, they just have a computer that programs
everything is starting from
them.
the complete base of nothing.
Yeah,
and being built up off of that.
Right, and we we filter our water here. We don't want the chlorine in it. We don't want a lot of
on the flip side, that's part of what makes a place a place. Like
right,
that's
right.
The profile that this has
terroir.
Been, yeah, there we go. The terroir of the water. Is part of what gives it that character. That's why some of these beer styles became what they were. A Dortmunder lager is not that different from a Pilsner, which is not that different from a Helles, which is not like it was
right.
these other little minute details that were not necessarily like on purpose. It just that's just the way it was.
Right.
Goza, I don't think Goza was ever supposed to be salty. Well, it was just because there was some salt.
Well, my understanding with that was they actually used salt water by accident or something like that, and that's what got it there. And they're like, this is really good.
Like, we don't know how to get the salt out of this, so let's just do it. I mean, that's part of the fun of some of these things of how they develop. But then part of the fun also now, as craft breweries become a thing, is trying to recreate some of that stuff. And I think that kind of bleeds over into the contract world. Man, we went down a rabbit hole there.
Yeah,
we did. Let's as we kind of roll through this flight, we'll talk about each beer, but let's talk about you guys. Let's talk about kind of how you guys have continued to grow, how you've continued to evolve. Craft beer's weird.
Yeah.
And you have steadfastly maintained the soul of a craft brewery, which I think is hard, especially in places where you don't have. Not that you don't have a community around you, but like you have to drive a little further.
We have a small community.
You have to. I'm talking about breweries.
Yeah.
Like you have to drive a little further to get to a neighbor that's another commercial brewery.
Right.
You don't have that kind of comfort bubble of people to tell you that it's okay just to make beer.
Right.
But you do.
Yeah.
How have you kind of managed that balance of watching what the market is yelling at you to do, watching what you want to do?
Well, I mean.
Or have you? Are all of these tanks full of like hard tea right now?
No.
I guess I should have asked that first.
So the big thing that we I don't know, we've always chose to grow organically instead of forced grows.
Right.
And I think that really helps us out. I think in terms of reputation and in terms of just not overspending. So this way we're growing the way we need to grow. Now, I don't think the last time you were in, we had those 3 tanks, but now we've got 3 15-barrel tanks.
I've been here since they were there.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we made a show. I don't know.
Yeah. But, we added those tanks, and we're looking to add a couple more just because we're growing. I mean, it's a down market, so that's a weird thing. Now, there are certain things that I've caved into that I said I would never do, like one being making a high adjunct lager.
Sure.
And we've got that with regular domestic beer now, which is our light lager, but call it a premium American lager because we're not sending it out to get tested. We experimented a little bit when the seltzer fad was at its peak with seltzer, but honestly, we just found it was better to buy it from somebody else.
Yeah.
Find somebody that knows what they're doing and buy that, and that's...
Well, and those brands do kind of mean something to seltzer drinkers or to canned cocktail drinkers or whatever it is. When somebody walks in and they want a canned vodka based cocktail, like they're going for the little blue guys. What are those? The little high noons.
Yeah, high
that's
noons.
What they want.
That's what we get. I mean, we have high noons and we have Astra red cream.
Yeah. To me, and I'm looking through my lens of here in Cincinnati, that's what people want to drink if they're wanting to grab a seltzer. They don't want a craft seltzer. Well, not that those aren't craft beverages. Don't send
a lot of us don't have the equipment to make that properly, right? I think Braxton invested serious money to make their Vibe brand what it was, and then the problem was there was definitely. Anheuser-Busch did what Anheuser-Busch does best, which was market confusion, right? They haven't been able to pull that off with craft beer, but they absolutely they didn't want another They didn't want another craft beer market exploding on them, so they just produced 300 different. I mean, as an exaggeration, but different seltzers out there, and everybody got confused on what to buy, and now it's down to there's White Claw, there's High Noon, and then in Cincinnati, we've got March 1st one, but but not everybody gets that either, and I don't know how it does. I mean, I can't speak to it because I don't work for March 1st or anything, but
it's everywhere. I know that.
But I mean, outside of Cincinnati, though,
I don't know how far outside of Cincinnati it is. I don't know if they have the capacity right now to do much more outside of Cincinnati, because you can walk it. I bet I can drive down to the bowling alley here in Alexandria, and they probably have Astra red cream soda.
I think you're making the wrong bet there, buddy.
I'm gonna check. but the point is there that you can walk into places that you wouldn't expect a craft beer brand at all.
Right.
Let alone,
they carry Truth down there, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it surprises you sometimes, the places that you walk into and you see not just that is there. Sometimes there's a tap handle dedicated to it being there. That's how crazy big it is here in the city. Like it's
well, we had it on draft for a long time. We had two gluten-free options. One was always a cider, and the other one was the seltzer. And then this summer, it just quit selling for us, period. So now we're moving to it being in cans.
Right.
We still have 2 full kegs in our walk-in that we have not been able to move, which is unfortunate because, I've got a fairly good relationship with the folks at March 1st, and I don't want to not sell it. But at the same time, it's, we've got people asking for it back, which is nice, but we're moving to the cans with it.
Right.
And we're keeping a cider on because we definitely sell more cider than we do seltzer. And it's just.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't think that's normal for a craft brewery.
I don't. Well, but see, I guess it depends if you call High Noon a seltzer or if you call it RTD.
Well, I put them still both kind of in the same category.
And I think we'd probably be. I'd have to look at our numbers, but I think we'd probably be neck and neck with in terms of our cider and our. Well, it's not our cider. It's I think we have Blake's. Usually, we were doing Pivot for a while. And now we're looking at switching out Blake's for that Northwood. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Norwood there.
Yep. Yeah. They just started dipping their toes into Kentucky, and our distributor Seligman happens to carry it, so that worked out for us. So I think once we get towards the end of this cider that we have from what's it called, we're going to be switching over.
But I don't know that there's many, especially here in Cincinnati. I don't know that there's many breweries that are kind of doing that same thing where they're carrying both a canned cider and some seltzer or canned
it's draft cider is what we're having.
Yeah, but I don't know that they're selling as much cider as even close to anything else.
So we have a gluten-free people that want it. Now to that, and I don't know if you saw that little fun thing I put out the other day, or
I don't know if I did
a month ago now. I do a blog post every now and then when I absolutely.
Oh yeah. Was this about the Clarex stuff?
Yeah.
If anybody goes back to last week's episode of this show too, with Adam Mills, at the very end of the episode, I think it was definitely on the episode. He let loose that he was not drinking traditionally. He worded as traditionally brewed beer for a while because of a gluten intolerance, and that he had been seeking out beers that he knew had been brewed using this brewer's Clarex that drops it all out, and that seemed to be working.
But it doesn't drop it out. It's an enzyme that breaks it down. So gluten's kind of a
nerd. You got my point.
but it's a complex protein that you're breaking it down. So this way it doesn't wind. I mean, the protein's still in there, but it's not the chain it was.
Right.
So just long story short with that, and it does help it to fall out too, because a lot of coagulated proteins fall out when you're cold crashing. Now I'm gonna leave the nerd part alone.
He was describing that it also it's better for your filters in the brewery too, because the things are broken down more.
Yeah.
So it's not trying to pull that stuff out of there that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because so those proteins don't stay in the beer the way it normally would with gluten.
Right.
So Brewer's Clarex, just to kind of if you didn't read it, I know you did, but it was developed to prevent cold haze or chill haze, which is when beer gets too cold. Every now and then, if there's too much gluten in it, it'll look cloudy. So they invented a product that broke that gluten down, was because that's what that is just gluten getting cold and showing itself in the beer. So they noticed, like, if you had it and you let it sit for like 10 minutes and it warmed up, it was gone.
Right.
And that's just gluten in beer. So they invented this brewer's Clarex, and when they were experimenting with it, and I mean, when I was in school for brewing in 2015, that was kind of like, we're kind of figuring this out, that we can do this. Well, now they've got a calculator that actually tells you how much you can do to make it, quote unquote, gluten reduced. But gluten reduced means you've reduced it to an undetectable level.
Well, and that's I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't really understand when you're talking about gluten-free. Like, to say something is gluten-free, in my opinion, and I'm sure that there's some kind of legal side to this also, but like anything that's made in a brewery where there's gluten around, there's no way you can call it gluten-free, because that stuff's just floating around in the air. I don't even care, like a kitchen side. Like, if you're talking about like a kitchen that's in a brewery and there is like that air is transferring back and forth. If there's grain dust in the air and somebody's frying something, like they were cooking something on a grill, guess what? There's probably some gluten in the air.
Well,
so it's not free of gluten.
Ish.
Gluten reduced.
No,
everything.
Well, we're not allowed to call it, because the product ones contain gluten.
Right.
And that's why they've got to call it gluten reduced, because as of now, the level that can test, the machinery that they use to test gluten.
It's like peanut butter, though. You know, in the schools now where like there's a sign on the
like
door,
that.
You can't even put peanut butter in the room because the kids that are allergic to it.
Nah, it's a little bit different than that. It's always been different than that. It's really weird, though, because there is people that have a wheat allergy that has nothing to do with the gluten in it. So I worked at Mellow Mushroom as a part-time job when they first opened in Wilder, and I'm pretty sure that was the first location to come to Cincinnati. I think there's one up north now, right?
There's one in Westchester. It's been there for a long time. I don't know how long ago you're talking. You're pretty old, so it could have been a while. 2011, 2012. That had to be close. I don't know. But years don't make sense to me.
Well, I went from, I started...
Not because I'm old, just because they don't make sense.
They don't. Once upon a time, I bartended at Murphy's down in Clifton, right? And then it was a very part-time thing for me. I got to a point where, I was interested in starting the brewery. I actually penned it on paper, and that would have been 2011. So I started the brewery in 2011 on paper with a plan to open at that point. And I got a job just to kind of remind me how to bartend and how crazy things get at Mellow Mushroom when they first opened up in Wilder. And I was still working for U.S. Bank at the time. So I'm pretty sure it was 2011. It might have even been 2010. But my whole point here is that they make a gluten-free pizza, and they ask if you have a wheat allergy. Because if you have a wheat allergy, they make it and I don't know if every Mellow Mushroom does this, but I know the one in Wilder does. They've got their own room that they make that pizza in. That they flip the crust and everything. It's made completely separate with no wheat at all. So it's different flour, different everything.
Because it's in the air. I'm telling you.
Well, it's the wheat allergy can be a lot more serious, I guess, than a gluten.
2012 was Westchester.
Okay.
This is why I need a producer, because they could just be doing this while we talk and looking all these fun facts up that I'm not going to look up Wilder. Yeah, it was about the same time.
Yeah, I think Westchester was under construction when we opened, if I remember correctly.
Let's drink another beer, and we'll go back the way we're supposed to go. We'll start back at the beginning.
Whatever you want to do, man.
This is Garden Heat, and I don't know if we've tried this on the show before. We might have.
If we did, it would have been when you first came out here.
Somebody can correct me and send the emails, and I won't do anything about it. But Kentucky Common.
Yeah.
So there was like this fun little thing right around that time when you guys opened.
Yeah.
That there were other breweries too that were like, oh, we're gonna make Kentucky Common. This was kind of this is the Kentucky thing. This is our native beer style. Tell me about the beer style first.
Okay, so if I remember right, it's 4 or 5 native, and I mean native, not Native American, like
native
the people that were here before.
They were the beer styles
are native to the United States. That's what we'll say instead of America.
Do you know what they are?
Yeah, it's a California Common, an American light lager.
Wait, can we call it steam beer now since all that's for sale?
It's already been sold.
Somebody bought it?
Yeah, I don't know who. I can't remember.
So we can't call it that. Somebody else will sue us.
Yes, well,
Steam beer.
California Common, Steam Beer, whatever. You have the Cream Ale, American Light Lager, and what am I? The Kentucky Common.
American Premium Light Lager.
It's the same
American
that's
Adjuncted Premium Light Lager.
So it is just the 4. I thought there was one more for some reason, but it's the 4. And Kentucky Common's one of them. Now, my understanding of the story is that Civil War happened, right?
Mm-hmm. It did.
And,
I confirm that it happened.
Yeah. And all the soldiers were drinking pretty hard bourbon after they got done. And,
I can also confirm that was that time frame. Yeah. There was a lot of spirits.
Turn of the century, 1900s, early 1900s. They were producing all this corn here in Kentucky to make Kentucky bourbon, because back then bourbon was only made in Kentucky.
Not just in Kentucky, though. The corn was a massive crop just in the United States in general right around that time. That was the one thing we were making a ton of.
Things haven't really changed. But we had so much of a surplus of corn one year that the soldiers kind of stopped drinking as much as they were. Maybe their wives got on them. I don't know. But it hit a point where they stopped. And Kentucky had this giant surplus of corn and no idea what to do with it. So this one bar in Louisville, because it was bars really that made the bourbon, right, and shipped it out, said, well, what if we put it into beer like they're doing there, but like make it something ours?
Right.
And again, it's my understanding that they hired a brewer out of Cincinnati that made cream ale. He brought his own strain of yeast down with him.
Right.
And put it into that beer and then put a little bit of dark malt in it to kind of make it different than a cream ale. It's a cream ale with at least 33% corn in it.
It has a lot of those flavors that, again, not that this tastes like bourbon, but that are reminiscent of things that you get from bourbon. Like this would pair up with bourbon very well. Yeah. It's super sweet, but it does have a little bit more character to it than a cream ale might. Cream ale, and from my understanding, was just Americans trying to replicate some of the stuff that was happening over in Europe and just didn't have the technology to do that yet.
Right.
And just happen to have a whole bunch of corn.
Yeah. So what makes
this is different. Like this was actually, this feels like it's something that's more purposeful than what cream ale was to create good beer.
Well, and the lady that owns Apocalypse Brewing, Leah, she's actually done a lot of the research. She's kind of the one that really brought the style a little bit more to the forefront of what the history is on it. And it was kind of cool because from her I was able to find like some recipes, some old recipes. And the funny thing is it doesn't really say anything. It says 33% corn. It says however much base malt, and it says dark malt. So you don't know what that is. There was also, when the style first came back, too, there was a group of people trying to say it's supposed to be a sour instead of...
That goes back to that same conversation as, like, Goza, was it really supposed to be salty or just kind of was salty sometimes?
I think all beer back then had a little bit of sour to it because they didn't understand the cleaning and the sanitation like we do now.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that like if there were probably some places that if you went to your local tavern or whatever and you got the fresh batch of Kentucky Common as it rolled in from the brewery or rolled up from the guy that was making it downstairs, it was probably not sour. But if you showed up the next week, it was probably a little tart. It probably had some sour. So depending on when you were drinking the beer, it was probably a little different.
Yeah, and there's probably that too, right?
I think that's a fun side of historical beer styles, but also maybe a misconception and a misunderstanding of them. But also makes it hard, like you can't really recreate these things that people were making,
right? Well, and you'll never know unless you were able to find some that somehow was magically preserved,
right?
For how many years, I
mean, but that's like even then though, like I'm saying, like 1 week you can have this, and the next week it was probably a little bit different. The style itself was different.
Yeah, you go to like Antarctica and find it that somebody took it there and just dropped it. It's not going to change at all, right?
Right.
Other than it would be frozen and unfrozen. Well, assuming no light hit it though.
Right.
So, But that'd be the only way. And I mean, what are the chances of anybody doing that, you know?
But even then, did you get was it frozen right after it was brewed, or was it frozen after it had been sitting for a couple of weeks?
How long was the boat ride?
Yes. How did it get here?
Yeah.
I like historical styles. I think they're fun. It's like this romanticism of this idea of like time traveling back to what Cincinnati or wherever you happen to be from was, and like what was it that people were drinking. And I mean, it probably wasn't great. That's kind of the whole joke of it all. Like we spend a lot of time trying to recreate historical styles that probably weren't really,
they were probably pretty terrible, honestly,
not nearly as good as what this is. You know, this is probably not what Kentucky Common was.
Right. It's probably, hopefully it's a lot better. I don't know.
It's delicious. Tell us about the beer itself, though. Kind of like you said, there was a large stretch of time where this wasn't on. Why'd you bring it back? Tell me about the beer.
It wasn't that we didn't have it on. It was just we had a lot of light options at one point, and we still kind of. I mean, this is one of those trial and error type things, right? Like I like big beers. Mm-hmm. I like ones that are just 7% or above, right?
Right.
And we were brewing a lot of those for a while. So Garden of Heaton, which is what you're drinking, our Kentucky Common, we brought that out to kind of offer a light offering, and we started out with it. It was last minute decision that we made to brew that beer and have something light available at opening, because everything else was 6.5%, 7%.
Right.
But it was supposed to be, but then we had a problem with our brew house. I'm pretty sure I've talked to you about that before.
I think so. Yeah.
But one of our beers that was supposed to be, you know, around that same range was our black IPA. It never boiled enough. We can only get it working with one of our jackets on, so it simmered instead of really boiled. It never got that nice rolling boil that you need.
That was called
Sessions in Black.
Sessions about if I can find what episode that was that we talked about it, I'll link it in the show notes.
We had that was a nightmare, but you know it's we've had a lot of people ask us to recreate that beer too. I mean, just to change the subject for a second, and I'm like, well. How do you want us to do
kind of on that same track as trying to recreate historical styles. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can try, and in all honesty, most people aren't going to know the difference. And they'll be, oh yeah, this is great. This is exactly how I remember it. Awesome.
Yeah, and you're probably right, but I don't know. So we hit a point where we kind of overcorrected hard the other way, and we had way too many light beers. Right. So Garden of Heaton kind of quit selling because we had. And you know, I like our Kolsch too, but we had our Kolsch on, we had that on, we had our Blonde Ale on, and then we came out with regular domestic beer. So we had these three beers that were all under 4.5%, with I think regular domestic's 4.75, but all lower ABV beers. And then we decided to kind of make things cyclical. First of all, we took off all in blonde. So our blonde ales, we've got it in cans available, and once that's done, we're pretty much done. I think
that's a fairly normal trend right now too. Is that and that not to say anything about any of the beers because they're all good, but like if I walk up to a tap list, and even if in my head I'm like, all right, I want something light, that's where I'm going right now, and there's a Kentucky Common and a Kolsch and a Pilsner and a Blonde Ale, like there's definitely a hierarchy there. Unless I know the beers and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had this one for a long time, or I haven't seen this one for a long time, I need to try it because it's some kind of emotional response to needing this beer.
Yeah.
Like there's a hierarchy of like, I'm going with a Pilsner.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, Kolsch, I'm going with the Kolsch, and then Kentucky Common, and then the Blonde. Like it becomes like this thing in my head just because of the styles themselves. And
well, I think what we wound up with was somebody looking at it saying it's too dark, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't taste like a dark beer, but a lot of people were looking at it saying, well, I don't want that one, it's too dark.
Sure.
You've got these other three that are lighter color. Why can't I have one of those?
But that's a valid reason. Like for me, it's a little sweeter than what I typically want when I want a lighter beer, which is kind of the same as a lot of blondes. They're just a little bit sweeter than I want my light beer to be. I want something that's a little zippier, as I like to call it. And so like, but if the light option that was on tap was just that blonde, heck yeah, I'm going for it. You know, like it's, you know, like it starts to shift like what people are choosing based on the things that are available around them, which probably speaks to a much bigger thing that's happening in craft beer right now, where there's so much choice that sometimes you pass one thing up because of something else.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and I think what we kind of said was, okay, so when we have the Kolschan, we're not going to have Garden of Eden on, or if we have, the Pilsner on, we're not going to have Garden of Eden on. It's kind of just this, because it's competing against our own other beers, and it just doesn't sell. We'd rather it be fresh. We'd rather it. Did it break?
Just keep talking.
It break?
I mean, it didn't break, but
His camera's broke. He monkeyed around with it too much, and now it's not working. Maybe. It's all right. It was the camera that's on me. Just keep the one that was on you the whole time. We don't need me anyway. Nobody wants to see this mug.
I just got done telling people how every episode is video, and you can go check out YouTube, and the video is there.
There's still video of you.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah, they would rather have that than me. It's
Goodness.
All right.
Hopefully that wasn't too long.
It doesn't matter. So yeah, I think I answered your question. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but the idea of having other choices around you that are similar to one thing kind of speaks for this big thing that's happening in craft beer right now, especially on shelves and on tap handles in bars.
I heard a noise. That's all.
I couldn't hear it.
Okay.
And did that kind of, as things have kept kind of growing and evolving around you guys here, did that change how you kind of do this whole thing, or was that were you always going to be insulated from that a little bit, because this is
I think we're always going to be
down there?
Well, I shouldn't say that. It was kind of like I don't know. We realized that we were missing audience. We were having a lot of people not showing up. We started with our liquor license, getting that, and doing cocktails and having a decent bourbon selection. But then, nobody wants that. I shouldn't say nobody, but it's expensive to sit and drink bourbon all night, especially if you're drinking high-end bourbon. So
it's also not as fun, I don't think. It's a different type of drinking.
It is. And I think what we want, and I'm not trying to put that down either, because I like bourbon,
I love bourbon.
But I think we had a time where people were going out in groups of friends, and they want to come here because we didn't have a lighter option. And so we introduced PBR to our menu, and that didn't really help things.
The old urban artifact.
Well, my understanding is they introduced that because they kept finding it in their trash cans,
right.
so might as well make money on it.
It's Narragansett now, I think, up there.
Yeah, well, we introduced it as just a way to have something for somebody that refused to go out otherwise. And, I mean, I don't know if you call it, I don't want to call it stupidity, but that's the term I'm keeping up. The fact that you're unwilling to try something different than what you normally have. My brand, I've been programmed that my brand is Miller Lite, and that's all I can ever drink. Or I've been programmed that my brand is Bud Light, and I don't drink anything else. I'm never going to try anything else. Screw it. Nothing else is going to taste as good to me. And having that mindset is kind of a problem that we've dealt with here since the beginning, and we still kind of deal with it.
See, that seems so crazy to me. I can't imagine that if there and maybe this is a problem that's kind of shifted a little bit over time, but if there's an option that is very close to what you typically drink,
yeah,
I think that most of those drinkers, this is the brand that I drink, will be like, all right, this is the brand that I drink. I'll drink this, but I don't like it. And then they'll still drink it, and they're okay. And the next time they'll still come back. With
regular domestic, we've had success with a lot of Miller or Bud Light drinkers saying, I do like this. This is good. Whatever they want to say. But then we still have this hardcore group that won't even taste it.
And regular
Won't even
domestic
try.
is your light.
Yeah, sorry.
your
Regular
American-
domestic beer is our. We get sick of people ordering regular beer, domestic beer,
Right.
which I think they kind of felt insulted when I said, "Well, you can't get much more domestic than what we're making here."
That's a pet peeve of mine. We probably talked about it when we
I'm
did talk
sure.
about that beer on the show.
I'm sure,
But
we
there's nothing more frustrating to me than walking into one of those chain restaurants and it's happy hour, and you're like, hey, what are the happy hour specials? Oh, half price appetizers. You can get 10 boneless wings for $5, and all domestic beers are only $5 for the biggest serving we have. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm going to take a truth. And they're like, oh no, that's it's not domestic.
That's an
I'm
import.
I'm like, excuse me.
Wait, we're in Cincinnati.
I hate
right?
that.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
it. I hate it so
man.
much.
Oh, that's like it's a little tongue in cheek with the name, but
Yeah.
but I think it's a lot of people get a kick out
Yeah,
of it.
no, it makes sense.
But what we I'm sorry, but what we have found is that a majority of people who are willing to try it enjoy it.
Yeah.
But and I've even done blind tastings with people at the bar. Okay, Miller Lite, Bud Light,
Okay.
regular domestic. We even put Yingling in there a handful of times. And what's your brand? I don't drink anything but Bud Light.
Yeah.
Okay, try these 3 and see which one you like the best. I'm not going to fall for that. That Miller's too hoppy for me. Like, okay, just try it, and they'll have it, and they'll be like, well, I like this one, and it tends to be our beer. I'm like, well, that's ours. I didn't know you guys made that, and it was something that, especially at the beginning, we did it. Well, I shouldn't say at the beginning. We kind of started doing it over the summer, I guess. I did it at my house. I did it with groups of friends that say
Right.
they never drink craft. A lot of Army buddies I have, just
Yeah.
refuse it.
Well, people get an idea in their head. It's not that they actually have ever sat there and tried different beer next to each other like that.
Right.
They have this idea in their head that like, no, this is I know that this is comfortable and I know that I like this,
Yeah.
and I'm afraid to get outside of that comfort zone.
I think a lot of it goes to the marketing, especially like if you look back when we were younger. I think part of the reason we're seeing, and I don't know if we need to talk about the decline. Well, no,
Just for
you're
the
not. You're
record.
not that.
I'm pretty young.
You're younger than me.
I'm going through a crisis. I turned 40 in a couple months, and
That's not
yeah.
much of a crisis.
That's
All right,
could die any day, man.
we all can.
Oh God.
Well, that went dark quick. But I lost
I got
my
you
train of
off
thought now. No. I guess the thing is that
The marketing
especially
of it, like, you know, like
they
it.
marketed it. I mean, to me as a kid, I was marketed to for Bud Light,
Yeah,
especially
Bud
the Bud Frogs.
Oh yeah, all of those
Spuds
commercials.
McKenzie, all that kind of stuff.
The Miller commercials were pretty good too.
Yeah,
Those
Yeah.
girls in the fountain. I know that's probably inappropriate, but my God, it was a good commercial.
especially when you're an adolescent boy.
Yes. When I grow up, I'm drinking Miller.
But it had in the branding on it. I mean, the branding is great, but they used to give out. I can remember going down to like the WEBN fireworks and getting a free Bud Light T-shirt or Budweiser T-shirt down there in a kid's size, right? Like,
Yep.
why are they giving that to kids? Well, you look at it now, and that's why they were giving it to you. They've marketed it to you, so there's some subliminal advertising going on where. These people, it's ingrained in them. It's part of their culture. It's what their dad drank. It's what it is, and they're never going to have anything different. Well, as soon as you prove to them and you break that fallacy that they've got in their head, then they're
Right.
like, okay, well, let's try something different.
It was always a thing, though, like whether it was conscious or not, maybe it changes. But like even before, big beer really took over, and we'll talk just Cincinnati, like before big beer kind of took over and became what it is now. Like there were still like these weird little pockets, these regional pockets in Cincinnati. Like, oh no, we drink Shaneling here.
Yeah, we only drink Wiedemann.
Yeah, this is Wiedemann.
Yeah.
This is Hootie. This is these were like the. It was just because your grandpa did it, or this is what the church has at the festival, or like this is
it's
like
your
it just
first
becomes
beer or whatever.
becomes
It could
your
be that.
brand.
Yeah,
Which maybe maybe as craft beer keeps growing and keeps evolving, we'll get some of that. Like, it's like, oh no, like that brink, that's good stuff, but we're from Alexandria, we drink Alexandria, like that's our beer.
Yeah.
Like maybe we will see that evolution over time.
Well, I think we might see that as well. You say growing, and we're now in a down market.
Evolving is a better kind of.
Which is this is the first time in how many years that craft's been, or beer in general, has been down.
But I'm still looking at like through this lens of what's happening in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I can get that too. But I think as we see more of I call it consolidation wars almost. I think we're going to see something where I don't want to say it's going to go back to as bad as it was in the late 70s, early 80s, where Anheuser-Busch is buying everybody. But I hate to say it, but I see a lot of breweries closing. I mean, and I notice it because, we
think
get
locally.
I hope not.
I still think that.
But I think competition.
I still think we're going
to
see more places open than we'll see places
there's more
close.
Breweries opening too. There's more breweries opening than closing in Cincinnati. And
I don't think that we're going to see that number shift for a very long time, if ever.
I hope you're right. I really do. I hope it's at least 1 for 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know. I know of a few that are struggling too, and I'm not.
But this is a really, really terrible way to think about it. But when you have a brewery that's struggling, and I'll use an example that doesn't affect me emotionally. We'll say Moeller Brew Barn. They come into Monroe and they open up a brewery and they last a year and they close.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And I wanted to see them succeed. Obviously, we want everybody to succeed. But in that time, then there's 4 other breweries that are not in a massive multi-million-dollar production facility looking to crank out beer to God knows how big of a footprint that have opened.
Well,
it makes me feel a little bit better. Like, it's like, okay.
I think that goes back to that whole organic growth, though, right? I think Moeller, and I don't know them. I don't know anybody there. I've never met them, so I'm not trying to say anything bad. I've never even had their beer, so I'm going to preface it with that.
Right.
But I think that they were trying to grow at the old pace when that old pace was shutting down.
And I think that is the majority of places that are closing. I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and send your fun emails or your tweets or whatever. It's fine, but that's the majority of places,
But it did feel forced, right? Like they came in. I was like, wait,
most of the places that have and this is again not everybody, because we can all name places that shouldn't have closed that did for lots of various reasons. But most of the places that are closed, when you take a step back and you look at it, and be like, oh, well, that's why they closed, and you can see this shift to try to do something much bigger than the market can handle. And then there's lots of examples of that around, and it's
yeah. I agree with you that is absolutely a majority of what we're seeing close. It's not as much as we're not seeing like the small guys close, but now you are seeing people go into these small areas where there might not be enough room for 2 breweries, and now they're battling it out. You know what I mean? And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm thinking of one in particular, and it's going to be a shame, but they're going to hit a point.
No, I'm curious.
I'm not going to get into it on.
We can bleep it out. No, that's too much work.
Nah.
I'm curious. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Get into it, but I don't see them. I don't see them making it through what's going on with them.
Right.
Because they had a bigger brewery come into the area and they're making more popular beer.
Right.
The brewery in question makes a little bit more traditional styles, and they have a following, but they've lost a lot of the semi-regular following. You know what I mean? They don't lose their regulars, but
the people that were there just because it was a spot that was there. It was a spot to be there.
Big craft beer in the area.
Makes sense. Do you... Overall, well, let's drink another beer.
All right. You already started.
I know. I got thirsty. It's a Dunkel.
Yeah.
And I love a good Dunkel. The Dunkel is probably the beer style that really, really got me hooked on craft beer.
It's what brought me into it.
It was like, it was still light enough that I could drink a lot of it and keep up with like you're hanging out with all your college buddies and they're drinking, light lagers and stuff. And it was about volume. And I, was drinking heavier stuff and I'm like, I can't drink that much. And everybody kind of laughs at that and peer pressure sets in. Like, all right, it's something that I can still drink a lot of.
Right.
And this was one of those beers that you can just sit and drink like a Bavarian.
Yeah.
Just drink all day.
Yeah. Well, I got turned on to them when I was over in Germany. And that's a recipe I've been tweaking for a long time. T-ball is my dad's nickname for my youngest brother, Tyler. So that's kind of what it's named after. He asked me to make him a dunkel when I was a home brewer, and I didn't have technology. Him and I lived together for a while, and I didn't have the technology at that point to do it. I didn't have a good way to lager. So it's a beer that I've been working on. I think originally we put a little bit of rye in it to kind of give it something different. And honestly, this is the closest I've gotten it to a Bavarian Dunkel. That's what I had over in Germany.
It's great. Like it has some of that sweetness from the malt, but it's still like it's a fairly dry beer. Like it still kind of drinks crisp and like
that's
like
a lager.
Good,
it should still always drink crisp, even if it's sweet.
We don't have to talk about that this episode. We can talk about some lagers that are around, but
I kind of, and I think I've talked to you about this too. I think the lager in general,
let's go down the rabbit hole.
Dude, I love that rabbit hole. I'll talk about it all day. I think that there's been a conditioning of what a lager is, and there's people that don't realize that, okay, this is what it's supposed to be,
right.
But they've had so many, and I hate saying it, but it's like a craft lager. They've had so many of those that don't taste to what the style's supposed to be.
It started,
now they think this is the way lager's supposed to taste.
It started with American lager when they started just kind of, and the reason that American lager turned out the way it did was not necessarily a bad one. It was new technology that was happening, people trying to make things more efficiently, trying new things that turned lagers faster, which I need to make that clear. I don't have a problem with people trying to find new ways to make lagers faster. Tradition for tradition's sake doesn't make sense to me. I think, well, it does a little bit. It's still fun and it's still romantic, but if you can make a product that tastes just as good as one that takes 3 times longer to make, more power to you. So, don't do something just because you're supposed to do it that way. But the problem that happened with American lager and probably with craft lager a little bit now too, is that it's starting to not taste the way it's supposed to taste.
Right.
And the experience isn't the way it's supposed to be. And your point, which we've talked about a lot of times, is that now there are people that are coming to expect that, or that's what they think of when they think of the product.
Of what a lager should be.
Right.
And it's not right. Like, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus or anything like that. But what's U.S. Open Beer Cup, which is a Cincinnati competition, but breweries enter it from all over the country. There's lagers in there that I would be like, are you kidding me? That won that category? Like, I remember reading that list this year, and I think this was the first year we didn't really enter it. We maybe entered like one beer or something, but and I was reading it, I was like, I had that lager and I couldn't finish it. Like to me, that's not. I guess there's an expectation with me that when if I have it and it doesn't meet the category, immediately I dislike it, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm not trying to find the positive in things.
I mean, and there is a whole thing to that too, of like trying to brew to style versus just trying to make a beer that is enjoyable to drink, which are two very different things.
Right. And I wonder if I've become too snobby too. I always have that, but I'll have it with. We'll do things where we do side-by-sides with our bartenders and stuff, and our bartenders all have pretty decent palates. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 exceptions in there, but, we'll have other... I've got Andy back there brewing for me now, too, so I'll have him...
You're just collecting Andy's here.
Yeah. There's 3 of us here right now. I think he's still back there. I don't see him. He's probably sitting down. I think I got to drive him home. His car broke down today.
Oh, Lord.
I feel bad for the guy. He can't catch a break, man. He really can. I love the dude. But, and I mean, it was just a radiator hose broke or something like that for him. It wasn't a big deal, but it's just.
You don't have extra hose laying around here?
I've got plenty.
Rig something up.
Go in there with like some of those worm gear clamps. Don't worry, Andy, we got
It's
you.
fine. You'll be fine.
We'll get you home.
But there are beers that like if somebody just puts it in front of me and says, "Hey, here's a beer, let's have a beer," and I drink it, that I'm fine with.
Yeah.
But that if somebody puts it in front of me and says, "Try this. This is our Dunkel or our Mexican lager or our Pilsner, God forbid," that when I drink it, it does like it triggers this thing in me, and it's like, oh God, why would you say that to me? Like, why would you do that? As you're handing me this beer, like, why? Like, just make up your own style. Like, we can do that. Like, nobody cares. I mean, people do care. People will give you shit for that, but it's okay.
I'd rather get shit if you make the style
100%.
I'd rather give you shit
Make
for
it
that
up.
than me expecting A and me getting
Make
B.
it up so that I know what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
This movement towards pseudo lagers being normal is not what I want craft beer to do. And again, I've had some that are fine, and there's no need to trick me the next time I'm sitting at your bar and put it in front of me and like, hey, how's this? There's no need to do that. It's fine. It tastes fine, and
I don't know. There was one brewery I could think of, and they're no longer around, so I'm not gonna say their name, but I am gonna say what they told me is that they lager in the kegs.
I've heard of places,
and I said, well, you understand that everything that you're trying to get out of the lager, you're putting into that keg with the lager. So even if it settles down to the bottom, it's still in that keg.
Well, there's breweries too that are still around that, like, I know when they made this beer at the beginning, I know what it was, and I know what it tasted like, and I know what that experience of that beer was. And when I try it today, it's not the same beer.
Yeah.
It's
that's cutting costs.
It's changed, and it's cutting cost or cutting cost,
cutting time and tank,
which is still
do.
cost. And
that's the tricky part.
And I get it, and that is part of brewing, is trying to figure out those costs and trying to make it the way it makes sense. That's part of running a business, but there is also something about beer that is a little bit deeper than that. That still means something to some of us.
Yeah, I think the biggest place you can cut cost in terms of your beer tends to be your yeast, right? Like yeast, you could go from high quality yeast that you're paying 4 times the price for to a powder pitch. And I'm not trying to say one better than the other, but in my experience, if I'm paying for the better yeast, which we use white labs for the most part. We have a couple Omega strains and a couple Y yeast strains, but we always use liquid yeast. And my feeling of that is that the beer just turns out so much better.
Right.
Why would I take that away? Especially considering I can reclaim my yeast if I buy, a yeast brink, which is just a keg that has 2 valves on it, basically, and fill that back up with my old yeast. As long as I'm not overusing it, that liquid yeast tends to last longer. It tends to keep the bad flavors out for a longer period of time. But I also find that just a better flavor. I mean, so, I don't. To me, it tends to be like the second round or third round is kind of the sweetest spot that you can get with that yeast, because now you've got stuff that's already kind of worked and it knows what it's supposed to do. So now it's doing a better job than it did even that first time. It's not shocked as bad when you put it into the, a beer environment.
That actually makes way more sense than I would have thought it would have. That makes perfect sense. I mean, you've had this generation that, like, its parent yeast and its grandparent yeast has already been through this thing, and they've passed on all of those traits to baby yeast.
Now you get to doing it too much, then you've got yeast that's morphing and not doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
So there's a fine line, and it's kind of knowing when, okay, we need to not reclaim this yeast, just dump it. And that's fine too. But, on average, we get 8 generations per pitch. With Hothead, which is our Omega strain, I think we get 12 generations out of it. I mean, without any kind of problems. I've got a brother that does our lab work in Chicago. We ship him samples all the time. He plates and he's like, yeah, it all looks healthy.
Right.
It's not as religious as it used to be, but that's part of the process. Is now you kind of know where your spots are, and you don't have to do it every time. But yeah, that's. I don't know. I just think that's kind of where, especially with lagers, that's where the biggest difference. You're good, Brian. Sorry. You got hesitant because I don't think he wants to be on camera.
Well, the batteries are probably dead anyway. So. But is that the biggest mistake that you think new breweries are making now? Like even the small guys that are opening up is just not like having that focus on understanding some of those more scientific things.
I can't really say that because some of the better brewers don't understand the scientific stuff. I can't.
But a lot of them have people around them that do. But we hope. But then you get as this whole thing keeps shifting and as we start seeing more small neighborhood places. Yeah. I mean, one of the places that I go to very frequently right now is Bocce Brewing over in Wyoming. I've never even heard of that. It's in Gabby's. It's in Gabby's Cafe. He's got a little tiny system down in the basement, and I think he has 2 beers on tap. I think the most I've seen him have on at the same time was 3, and it's brilliant. But there's no plating things or shipping things off to labs or even any kind of concept of microbiology happening in there, which is okay.
But how big are they though? I mean, do you know? Off the is it just
like 10 gallons?
If he's doing that, it's cheap enough. He doesn't need to reclaim yeast. I mean, there's no cost benefit to him at that point. You have to have. I shouldn't say there's no cost benefit, but yeast at that point, $7 a pitch. You're buying 2 pitches, and what are you really? When you're looking at us, you're going from. So a brick of yeast is like $88 for 1 brick, and that's the powder. And if we're using the liquid, we're paying, I think it's $150 or $255 for a liter pitch.
Right.
And sometimes I have to do, depending on the size, it's lagers. I always double up my pitch. So, it's what $500 in yeast alone is where a majority of our cost is coming.
Right.
I mean, hops cost a lot too, but it's. I don't know. I've always been a big fan of the saying, you get what you pay for, right?
Sure.
And you pay the $88 instead of paying the $255. You're getting a higher quality, and it's going to be tough to prove to me otherwise. In talks with Evan at Braxton, the only thing that they use powdered yeast for, I think, is garage beer. And I understand that because that's a price point they're trying to hit. Everything else is liquid yeast there, though, and that's just the way we've always been. We did try that. What's that one called? It was a newer yeast that they found that actually puts out lactic acid.
Well, the sour Vissier.
Yeah.
Philadelphia sours.
Philly sour, yeah, that's what it was. But what we got with that was red apple. Too much red apple in the beer that it's not meeting our flavor profile,
right.
So we'd rather just kettle sour it and take the extra day to make sure it tastes the way it should taste.
Right.
And that's that goes to the other thing, time and tank, right? So, I get spunning valves are really nice because you can really limit what that yeast is able to put out because you're pressure fermenting.
Okay.
That spunning valve is what
gotcha.
that does. It's the valve that releases the gas. Sorry. So those are nice in a way, but it's not the traditional way. And I've had some of those are fantastic and some of them aren't.
Right.
And I think it's a dialing in process, and I'd rather just take the extra time and make sure it's going to turn out right instead of trying to, well, what am I going to do with this? I can't serve it as this. I've got to rebrand it. And that's the way I think about it, So I don't know.
Well,
I'm rambling.
But it's when you're when you're a smaller place, like you guys, or like anybody else that's smaller than what you guys are doing, like if you have something that doesn't turn out, like it really isn't as long as it's still drinkable. Like if it doesn't turn out, it's still fine. Like it's not hurting anything as far as the consumer is concerned, as long as you're letting them know this is not the same thing. But like when you start talking, like when you start scaling things up to these big kind of operations, if you have a batch of Budweiser that just isn't Budweiser, like that's you can't do anything with that. Like you can't do that.
But see, that's the other thing, right? So you get to these larger scales.
Yeah.
You're not brewing the one-off beers or anything like that anymore either, and you better be damn sure your processes are right before you scale up that big. But that's also where you see the biggest cut in cost. That's when you see people.
There's a weird middle ground within that, though.
Well, Braxton's your good example of that, right? I mean, they're a fairly large brewery. They're not the biggest by any means. There's
a handful of breweries that are kind of right in that pocket right now in Cincinnati. You know, Rheingeist is obviously big. Sam Adams is obviously big, but you've got, you know, like your Braxtons and your Mad Trees and your March 1st, and like they're even
Mad Trees. I mean, if you look at just Brew House alone, they're 3 times, 4 times the size of Braxton.
Brew House, but I mean, is the amount of beer that they're making is what I'm thinking in my head.
But the amount of beer is driven by consumers, right?
Sure.
So, but you go to Mad Tree and you know they've absolutely scaled all their beers up, but do they still have that 15 barrel?
That's
what
right.
I thought. They put it.
And I don't know which beers are brewed on which system and how that all breaks down.
Well, I'm sure what they're doing. I mean, this just has to be an assumption, but anything new that they're doing on that 15 barrel, or anything that they're doing in limited quantities, they got to do on that 15 barrel. Just because, I mean, what is that? That's a 3 vessel 100 barrel is their big brew house. So that's
four vessels.
4 vessels. So that's in a day, that's 400 barrels of beer. You know, for tanks, you can fill an 800 barrel tank in 2 days.
Yeah, I imagine. That's
just 12 hour. That's 2 12-hour days, right? So that's the stuff you really have to make sure you dial in if you're scaling up that big. Now, if you're staying small like us, you know, and I'm going to tell you, we are looking at actually expanding our brew house.
100 barrel brew house? No. It would fill half of your brewery.
No, it's we're actually looking at, and it's maybe the dumbest decision I'm on the cusp of deciding on, but turning our 2 vessel 5 barrel into a 4 vessel 5 barrel.
Okay.
So the idea there is that you can make 20 barrels or 40 barrels in 2 days if you chose to. I think that's right. I'm not thinking straight in. Yeah, it'd be a vessel. So in 12 hours we can turn 20 barrels. Right now we're turning at our best 10 barrels in 14 hours. So just to give you an idea, if we're doing like one of our triple batch tanks here, these 15 barrel tanks, right? It takes us 14 hours to fill it one day, and then we come in the next day and brew 1 batch, and we are spent. So the 4 vessel, and I mean, I know I'm kind of getting technical on all this crap too, but
you're taking, if I can explain it in like I was a dummy, because you know I'm good at pretending I'm a dummy. If you were taking there within the vessels that you have, there's different stages that are happening in there, different things. Yes. And if you add a couple vessels, instead of leaving it in that same spot and doing 2 different things, you can do one thing and then move it somewhere else to do the second thing while you put something else in there to do that first thing.
Right. So you have, by the end of your...
Look how good I did.
You did a
I'm
great
like a
job.
scientist.
Exactly. So, but you can even start 2 at the same time if you chose to, right? Which I don't know why you would, but you could. But the advantage is
that seems like a lot.
It does, but you're moving product the whole time. You're not waiting for one product to be almost completely done before you can start. And right now we're at a point where I think into our boil we can bring.
That's like trying to make your scrambled eggs and your bacon at the same time on 2 different burners. It's not fun.
Well, but with having the vessels, you have
bacon
one
first,
vessel.
Then eggs.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Because your eggs cool a lot quicker than bacon does.
Yeah. And then you get all that good grease in there. Somehow that relates to beer.
Well, kegs and eggs, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then, I don't know. So that's one thing that we're considering right now. And that's we're looking at, and I haven't been really shy about it. We're looking at a location in Lexington, just a tap room. We're not looking for any more. I kind of feel like Lexington's a good market for us, though.
Yeah.
It's not very saturated at all. We are looking north of Cincinnati. I'm not going to go into too much into that, but we feel like if we go into downtown Cincinnati or anything like that, we've got too much competition as is, and your rent and everything that you're going to be paying on anything you go into is going to be an arm and a leg. And with all that competition around us, is that going to be, for us to have like our kind of, I don't know what you call it, our brand of tap room here, which is...
I think that's a problem with Cincinnati right now, is that like there aren't a lot of brands that it would make sense for them to exist in downtown Cincinnati, which I think, as we saw with Taft's leaving, that like that's where I think we're gonna run into another problem soon, is that if you come to visit Cincinnati and you're downtown, it's like, where should I go to drink? It's like, there's only a couple places. Like you gotta go around.
Well,
I mean, there are great places in the city, but
so with Taft's, let me ask you this, and this is just, Mad Tree put a location downtown.
Yeah.
Rheingeist has their location.
Mad Tree put the Alcove downtown, which is not a brewery or even a tap room. It's a restaurant.
I thought it was kind of more of a
tap room. Restaurant.
Okay. Well, they've got the Alcove down there, though. You've got Braxton down, or not Braxton. Well, you do have Braxton down there. Yeah, you've got Braxton North. Then you've got Rheingeist,
Northern
Row, and I'm missing one other one here that I wanted to mention.
March 1st is on the square.
Yeah, that's right. That was the other one. So, and those are all a little bit more in friendlier parts of town, right? And I'm not trying to say,
I don't know.
Well, OTR's really changed around, and I'm not trying to say anything bad, but Taft's was a little bit off the beaten path of OTR.
No, not that. Not when maybe when they opened, but not
still
now.
Kind of are, though. I mean,
still right off of Washington Park. Like that's. I would say, depending on where you park, it's a lot sketchier going to Northern Row sometimes than it is Taft's.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you park there, though. But you have better parking options over by Northern Row.
Free parking, guys. I don't know if anybody realizes this, and maybe I'm letting out some secrets, but once you get above a certain point, and it's probably, Liberty?
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of free parking in OTR. Just note that.
He's back there. You could go on back there.
It's street parking, and again, sometimes at night, it might seem. I don't want to make it sound like it's not bad. I've never had an issue. I've haven't
had an issue since I was 20 years old down there. And I'm not trying to say.
Oh, Sinbev is there too. We got to count them, even though they don't have a tap room.
But I guess my thing is that Vine Street, I guess, is kind of where most of the stuff's happening. Like that's where a lot of the nicer restaurants are down in OTR.
Vine and Race, I think.
I'd say Race, and then maybe even Maine a little bit. Mm. But Taft's is kind of a block. You're getting closer to Liberty with Taft's, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's off the beaten path, but it's not as, it doesn't have as much going on around it. Right. So you're asking people to walk up the road a little bit from it when you've got Rheingeist a lot closer, and then you've got all these like places that serve all these other beers, and I just wonder if that's what happened with Taft's, if they got squeezed a little bit with these other craft breweries opening up around them. They've spent all this money making that church just beautiful, and I mean they did a great job with it too. And for them to walk away from that, you just have to wonder, what made that decision. And
I think Taft's is a very complicated one, because there's a whole other side to their business that I think people aren't really understanding, and like it just they're a weird beast within this city.
They are too, but they had really good food there. They had their pilot system there.
Just a absolutely beautiful brew pub.
But I just think it was too far off where people are comfortable going in over the Rhine. And I don't mean danger-wise. I just kind of think, well, if I'm going to be down here, I'm going to be where I can walk to all this other stuff. And if I have to...
But how many people are hanging out somewhere else and then walking over to Rheingeist? Like, I don't think that's happening.
But what I've kind of noticed with Rheingeist is people who are going there are either going or starting there, or they're hopping on
Yeah, the
little
streetcar.
the
Streetcar's right in front, yeah.
Yeah, but the streetcar's there by TF's too, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes by all of them.
Yeah, but it's
Or at
across
least-
the street.
At least
I
pretty
guess.
close to all of them.
I don't know what the
don't
problem is.
I think the problem is much more complicated than just any of that.
Yeah, but I do wonder if that was part of the problem is that they just weren't getting the foot traffic they were getting.
Maybe.
And I can tell you, we did an employee outing over the summer there. We started.
At Taft's?
We started at TF's, and
Did you
then
go upstairs or downstairs?
they only sat us upstairs because downstairs they had closed off.
Yes,
There were 5 people in there.
I love Taft's. Let me make that clear. I went to Taft's one time and was told that you can't sit downstairs unless you're gambling.
What?
It was a sports book. It was like a little gambling hall.
Like the speakeasy thing that they had?
Yeah,
That's what you're
Nelly's.
talking about? Yeah.
It was which is fine. I love gambling on sports, but you know what? Like it's I don't know that that's a cause as much as it is a reaction to other things that are going on.
But what we were all surprised about is we were there at dinner time, and it was us and one other group of people, and they had us on the. They didn't even have us on the main floor. They closed off the main floor. They had us on the 3rd floor, if you want to call it that. And you know, then it was. We tried to this before they announced closing or anything. Oh, we're out of that. We're out of this. You know, and okay, well, you know, it wasn't the beer. It was the food that they were out of. You know, and I was okay. Well, I get it. You know, this is kind of an off day. It was a Monday, so I do get that.
Sure.
But then we walk over to Vine, and we went to what's the arcade down there?
Is it Arcade Legacy? Is that right?
I think that no. 8-bit,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I think it changed names, but whatever. That
Pins is down there too. There's a bunch of places down there.
We went there,
Or
and
were a
then
bunch
we
of
went
places.
to. Now this is one that went out of business too, but they were packed. The one where it was like pour your own.
Oh, Copper and Flame.
Yeah, Copper and Flame.
Yeah.
We went there, and I kind of I have a feeling about why that's gone too, but I don't want to.
That's a big conversation there.
But there were more drafts there than. I mean, the only other place I can compare that to is Sergio's World of Beers.
Yeah,
down in Louisville, and I don't know if you've ever been there.
I haven't, but.
We need to go there sometime. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, that's a whole video within itself that I need to make one of these days.
It's just the experience, just finding the place. You're like, that can't possibly be. That's the guy. You go there, and you're like, it feels like I'm going into somebody's house. You sure that's where I'm going?
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. We've seen some
I need to do
weird
that.
stuff down there, but oh my God. And I'm sure anybody who's been there knows exactly what I'm talking about, because every time I've been there, it's been a new adventure.
Right.
But what's his name? He's now brewing Nick Landers, who's now at do you know Nick at all?
Yes.
He's at Moorline.
Sort of. Yeah.
Lager
Sort of know him.
Yeah, he used to brew down in Louisville at Gordon Biersch, and him and I went there one night, and he's like, I love it because every night, he's like, I go here 3 times a week, and every night it's a different adventure.
Right.
Because it's such an odd place. But it's also a place that's kind of on the honor system, so you go and you get your own beer, and then at the end, they're like, what did you get? It's all high. I shouldn't say it's all, but there's a lot of high ABV beer there. And then sometimes it's tough to remember. You know, never mind trying to be honest about it. It's just tough to remember. Like, what did I have again? We got to a point where we just started keeping the bottles even when they came to collect them. So this way we knew at the end of the night, hey, this is what we got. But yeah, it's
I need to make it down there so bad. There's so many places like that though that just have these unique personalities that it's hard to get to all the places when there's so much stuff happening.
Yeah, well, and it's far away. I mean, it's Louisville. You know, if you go down there, you got to plan to spend the night. You know, because that's the best time to be there is night. But anyways. Where's I going? So that's what it was like. I mean, they had so many different drafts up there, and then they had draft cocktails upstairs.
Right.
And you know, it was didn't have much food options or anything like that, but that place was packed when we got there. I mean, I don't want to say, there were probably 1 or 2 tables open. For a Monday, they were crowded.
Right.
And half the businesses on Vine were closed, and it was still a crowded area. We went to the arcade. The arcade was a little dead, but it got real busy by the time we left. So,
it's not I mean, yes, when you start talking about further south in the city, there are less people there right now than probably there were pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I know there are, but there's not a lack of people in the city of Cincinnati to support a business.
No,
it's always more complicated than that. There's more things that go into play.
Yeah, I just and again, I'm not. We're kind of being a dead horse talking about another business, anyways. But I was just so shocked because my dad and I went there prior to a concert one time. Tommy Emmanuel, you familiar with who he is? Yeah. My dad was a big fan of him, and we both had tickets. We went down and we ate at Taps beforehand. And I mean, that was like a Thursday night, and we couldn't, it was like a 2-hour wait. We were like, well, good thing we got here early, And then, that was 2019. And then, COVID definitely took a toll on everything. But,
sure.
And it changed the way people go out in general, I think. But yeah, I think just too many businesses built up on Vine and nothing else built up around them to really support them like the foot traffic.
Maybe.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't know that it was ever foot traffic that was their customer base.
That's all it ever was, because where else you couldn't park there? You had to walk.
Well, you can park right at Washington Park in that garage underneath the park. If you were going down there for something and you wanted to have dinner beforehand, that was an easy option.
Yeah, I agree.
It's way more complicated than just foot traffic or anything. There's so many factors that go into this, and a big part of it is Taft's business plan. I think that tap room it was a lot of money to run that tap room, and anybody looking at a spreadsheet has to see some big anomaly happening right here. And it's even if ends are being met, you see that, and it's okay, if we shift all of this here, how does this change the bigger picture? It's complicated.
Well, and I also wonder if they competed with themselves with the St. Bernard location. Anyways,
Maybe.
Because there were definitely people that I was seeing at their tap room that I now started seeing there on a regular basis at the Brewporium or whatever it's called. So,
it's very different experiences, which I think helps. I think that's important for any brewery that's building tap rooms that are relatively close to each other. You have to give people a reason to go to both.
Right.
When I want this, I go here. When I want that, I go there. And that, I think that's hard for some places to kind of figure out. I think Taft's did a good job with it, but that's,
I agree with you there. I agree that they're two different, completely different experiences. I'm sorry. We're beat a dead horse about this.
Let's drink this last beer.
All right.
So we're already over time.
That's
how the internet works. There's this very specific time you have to end a show.
I'm sorry, man.
No, it's fine.
I'm good at it.
It's fine. This is Eon Pale Apocalypse.
Yeah, Eon. It's named after a Tool song. So the Tool song is Eon Blue Apocalypse, and we
gotcha.
Eon Pale Apocalypse because it's a pale ale, hoppy pale ale.
4.5%. So this is
it's a session,
right in that solid session range. That So I have probably said on the show many times that I tend to shy away from hoppy beers when I'm out drinking. That has nothing to do with hops. It has more to do with higher ABV beers that we've talked about, like you love.
Yeah,
they make it hard to go out and hang out and drink for a long period of time.
Especially somewhere far from your home, like down here.
But you give me something that's 4.5% and still packs those flavors. I think it's right in my wheelhouse. I'm going to drink it. You tell me about the beer.
So this was kind of an idea that our taproom supervisor, or front of the house supervisor, came up with. He wanted a session IPA, but he wanted a pale ale too. And I was like, well, why don't we do one or the other? And I'll make it a hoppy or pale ale.
I like that.
And honestly, it turned out way hoppier than I thought it was going to be. No dry hop in it whatsoever. So that's just strictly
That's
kettle
good.
hops. Yeah, everybody's been drinking it like crazy down here, and I think it's going to have to become a mainstay.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's funny that the styles that kind of come and go and like people latch onto and like that people when they see them they recognize them now like, oh, I want that, kind of that same thing as Pilsner, American light lager, domestic lager, we want to call it,
Yeah.
or blonde ale. And I think that I'm curious the decision to just call it a pale ale and have it 4.5% versus calling it like a session IPA or a session pale or something like that. Because I think you're right with how this is listed right here on this paper. Because I think session IPA almost like pushes
It's kind
people
of a turn off.
It pushes
Yeah.
people away now.
well, and it walks the line. I mean, it walks the line between the two styles, between a session IPA and a pale ale.
Right.
But it was designed to be a pale ale. I was not anticipating it. I mean, I made it hoppy because we wanted it hoppy, but I didn't think it was going to get that hoppy.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a lot of late edition hops, which you will draw that much out of, but I didn't think we'd draw as much flavor as we did out of those hops.
It's good beer.
So it wound up being a little hoppier than we anticipated, a little bit more bitter than we anticipated, but it still doesn't have a very high IBU. What is it at? 41. So that's not. I mean, our IPAs tend to be higher unless it's in New England.
Yeah.
So, we were kind of like, well, let's see if we can kind of experiment and get like a Sierra Nevada pale ale or something along those lines. And what we wound up with was kind of like somewhere between Zombie Dust and Sierra Nevada,
Yeah, it's like Sierra Nevada just tastes like a kind of throwback pale ale at this point. Like you taste it, and I don't know what that is, but
it's got that nice bitter bite to it, and I feel like Eon Pale Apocalypse has that.
This
too.
tastes like a more modern version of a pale ale like that to me. Like it's good. It still isn't, and obviously it's been sitting here for an hour, so temperature is not there, but
Right.
it doesn't have like any of that kind of bite to it. There's not like a huge bitter kind of hit you in the face kind of thing,
Right.
which you get from a lot of people trying to. Even when you say session IPA, a lot of people try to still recreate some of that stuff. This is still maybe a little bit softer, a little bit more drinkable.
Well, see,
We're allowed to still call things drinkable.
that's kind of what I thought was the problem with most session IPAs in general was that they added all the hops that they would add to a stronger IPA.
Yeah, there's no
but
balance
they
to it,
didn't
yeah.
dial
No
it back
balance.
down to make it balance with that ABV. Because when you take ingredients away, because you're taking barley out of it, right?
Yeah.
Or you're taking barley and wheat or whatever else you're putting in it, you're losing those fermentable grains. So why wouldn't you lose bitterness too?
Right.
Why would you still use the same amount of hops?
try to
you
keep that
used?
balance as you kind of dial things back.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, and that was one thing I was kind of noticing with them, and with the exception of like maybe all day IPA or something like that, that was just something that I was like, man, that's super bitter. Why are they doing that? Like,
I'm in the middle of writing an article right now that I don't know when it's going to get done, so calm yourselves. That is about hop water, because I'm fascinated by all these hop waters that are being put out. Like,
yeah,
less so the ones that are like fruited, like 50 West, although that I'm definitely going to talk about that. But the stuff like Braxton is doing with theirs, that it's just fizzy water with hops,
yeah.
and trying to find a way to make that still drinkable it fascinates me.
I had a bartender, Michael Schuler.
Yeah.
A lot of people know him if you, especially home brewing around the town. But Michael brought me a hop tea,
Mhm.
and that one over the hop waters I enjoyed. Now it had a little too much sweetness to it for me, but it was good. Now,
But that makes complete sense to me, that you can use the tea to kind of balance out the hops.
right.
That's what's so crazy about hop water to me, is that like I'm trying to figure out how some of these places are
Well,
using things like salts and things like that to balance it out.
See, I just don't know.
It's fascinating me right now. So I'm working on that article. It'll come soon.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all the beer.
we drank all of the beer. They're
Yeah.
out of beer. Is there anything that you want people to know about Alexandria that you think that they don't know?
Benders.
Benders. Oh, we didn't even talk about the food. when he walked by earlier, I know you guys probably saw that on the camera. He smelled fantastic. He smelled like hamburgers. Is it burger night tonight? Is that
it's tonight's burger night.
It's burger night. That's why.
He's so Sean Weinbender. Some people might know who he is, but I don't know how many people would though. Used to be the head chef for Libby's Southern Comfort down in Covington.
He's kind of been around here locally at some really, really incredible places.
Yeah, and this is his attempt to start his own thing. And it's part of the reason we're looking at these other markets too, is they want to partner with us and look at other locations as well.
Right.
Their food, I mean, not to overhype it or anything like that, but I think in terms of brewery food, I think us and Nine Giant are and we got lucky. I mean, 100% lucky. We don't own the food. It's
you didn't get lucky. You had to. It took some time to figure out that right partner.
It did. I mean, this is our third food partner, but this is the one that works the best. And it. I mean, he brings something special. It's Southern Comfort style food. They don't do things like Nine Giant does, where they make their own ketchup, but they make all their other sauces themselves. Right.
Down here in Alexandria, we like
and I think he makes his own mayonnaise too, if I remember correctly. So he does an Alabama white sauce though, which is just it's spectacular. Not everything's smoked, but a lot of it is. But he takes staples and puts a fun twist to them. So like they've got a fried bologna sandwich.
Yeah,
and it is just. It's spectacular. I never thought I could like bologna that much again since I was a kid. You know, I mean, it's good. My mouth is watering talking about it. But you know, he's got pimento cheese balls, so it's like pimento fritters. I guess would probably be something to compare it to.
It's a really like it's hard to take food that is comfortable for people, especially in an atmosphere like a brewery where people aren't afraid to order something. You don't want some kind of goose liver or something or other with, you know, like you want something that is still like drinking food, and he has found a really, really good way to take that and not give it any kind of pretentiousness, but when he hands it to you, it's just better. It's scaled up a little bit. It just tastes better than what you might have been expecting. So,
and most of it is made from scratch. They're actually getting ready to start doing their own ranch from scratch too. I mean, right now his blue cheese dressing he makes from scratch. Obviously, he's not making the blue cheese himself, but he's making the dressing himself. Mayonnaise, all of his wing sauces, all of his rubs, everything like that. It's all in house. The only thing that he doesn't, and he just hates ketchup in general. He's a mustard guy, so he doesn't make the ketchup himself.
I'm all about that. I actually, the only thing I really like ketchup on is fries.
Yeah, and that's high. Well, they do tots, though. And
yep, I'm okay.
That's a fun argument that they get into with people is, why don't you do fries? They're like, because we do tots.
I'll take tots over fries. That's fine. And I'm okay with like barbecue sauce or mustard with my tots versus ketchup. I don't think tots need ketchup.
No, I mean... I like it with ketchup. I like them without. You know, it doesn't matter. So, anyways, they're awesome. Tonight's burger night. Wednesday nights are Wing Wednesdays, where they do $5 for 6 wings.
Yeah, it's if you haven't eaten here, come down here for the food and have a bunch of beer while you're here.
Yeah, it'll soak it up.
Like it is really, really good food, and I will put links in the show notes to everything for you guys to learn more about all of the places down here. Andy, thank you, buddy.
Hey, thank you, man.
I appreciate.
Good seeing you again.
I appreciate you making some time for me, and everything's tasting great.
Thank you.
Except for that one and that one and that one. It was all terrible.
Yeah,
I'm joking, guys. It's all good. It's really good. This is one of my favorite breweries in the city, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. The beer is great. The soul of craft beer is still alive here, which sometimes gets lost to other places, and that I appreciate more than I can put into words. It's still a craft brewery.
Yeah, we try.
I love it.
I like craft beer, so I hope it's always a craft brewery.
Me too. It's that word in itself is complicated, but you guys are doing it right. So thank you. Keep up the good work. If anybody doesn't already subscribe to the show, do that. Share it with a friend, and if you really want to help, you can go to thegnarlygnome.com/support and you can help that way. Or if you're a local business and you want to support, you can sponsor the show. We're getting ready to dive into season 10 of the show, and we're looking for sponsors for season 10. So reach out to me. Let's say sponsor at cincybrewcast.com. I think that's an email address. Send an email to that and we can make it work. If not, just like I said, share with a friend. Cheers, everybody. Cincy Brewcast, the voice of Cincy Craft.